UFC Macau starts in the middle of the night, which means if you're going to be playing DraftKings Fantasy, you have to get your ducks in a row and your lineup set before you go to bed. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to break down the entire UFC Macau fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and DraftKings plays. Before we talk about UFC Macau, let's look at the success that was UFC 309. Our DraftKings ownership projections continue to be the best on the planet. And this isn't best on the planet against Jimmy Bob's Twitter breakdowns. This is the best on the planet against giant DFS companies. The companies whose only existence are to be out there and produce numbers like this. The companies that have hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars into marketing, into their teams, still cannot produce better numbers than we did. UFC 309, our margin of error was 3.08%. The next closest was far higher than that. And when you're building lineups to compete against thousands of people for hundreds of thousands of dollars, every single percentage point matters. You can unlock these DraftKings ownership projections and join this crew of people that have put up over $700,000 of winning tickets in the last year right now. Just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. It's $10, and you will unlock not only everything you need for DraftKings Fantasy, but all of our picks, our bets, our artificial intelligence, and everything else that we have available to you heading into every single fight weekend. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. It's $10. Those ownership projections are preloaded into this optimizer. This will just build lineups for you. All of this and a million other things that I don't have time to mention available right now in one package for $10. You're going to get this card, UFC Macau. You're going to get UFC 310, and you're going to get UFC Tampa. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Let's go ahead and break down this card. Not a great card. Not a terrible card. It's an okay card. The main card is much better than the undercard, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the undercard is loaded with the road to the UFC tournament finals. The road to the UFC is a tournament to get into the UFC. It is specifically in the Asia-Pacific region of the world. So you have fighters from India, South Korea, China. You have a lot of fighters in that region. They compete in a tournament, and yes, it's a tournament, not tournament. It's not T-U-R-N, it's T-O-U-R. And if you go somewhere and you hire a guide, it is a tour guide, T-O-U-R. Don't come at me with your tournament bullshit. Anyway, all of those fighters compete in a tournament, and the winner gets a UFC contract. Very straightforward. The problem is when you have a lot of those fighters, they're all relatively unknown. Unless you watch that tournament with people on my side of the world really don't, you got to do a whole bunch of research from scratch, which is what I have done. So while I am confident in this card, I had to do more brand net new research on new fighters for this card than almost any other fighter this year. But let's go ahead and put that research to use. But first, we got a couple of UFC vets. We got Maheshate taking on Nikolas Motta. Maheshate, very young. He's only 24 years old. A ton of experience under his belt for his age, 13 fights. Style-wise, he's a fun striker. He can hang in a firefight, or he could dance around the outside and try to play a technical game. He'll do everything from traditional, old-school martial arts techniques to just spinning back elbows. If you let him push forward, he can have some success, but if you stay in his face, you back him up, you can definitely take over. He's a very durable kid that we've seen take multiple beatings. Vyacheslav Borshev did actually put him out, but Garcia beat the piss out of him, and he was there, a bloody mess, still marching forward. Gabriel Benitez, that was a back and forth. Maheshate would get smacked in the face, and he would smack back. Smacked in the face, smacked back, and ultimately he won that fight because he seemed to land a little more and a little harder than he was getting hit. He's taking on Nikolas Motta. Nikolas Motta is a striker, a pretty good striker at that. He's explosive, he's athletic, he moves pretty well, he's got good speed, solid diversity in that strike, or in those strikes, and he's got solid takedown defense at 82%, and that's how he is comfortable standing. He can be chinned. We have seen it before, but the reality is Nikolas Motta is a pretty good striker, faster than most of his opponents, and has plenty of power. This is going to be a back and forth fight. I think Nikolas Motta is a very good underdog at $7,500. Ultimately, I think Maheshate, if the pick and the DraftKings play are going to be different. The pick is probably going to be Maheshate because I think he's just so durable. And we've seen him finished. He's not impossible to finish, but he's a pretty durable guy who takes his beating. And I think Nikolas Motta could potentially start to fall behind and maybe lose a decision or something like that. But at $7,500 in DraftKings Fantasy, I think Nikolas Motta might be a decent shot. I mean, look at the numbers he put up. He just beat Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan was supposed to be a pretty good striker, pretty good prospect, and Nikolas Motta got that done, put up 109 points. His previous win before that, Cameron Van Camp, 110. So obviously those two fighters are not the best in the world, but neither is Maheshate. Then we have Xiao Long taking on Quang Lee. This is one of those fights we had to do a little bit of research. Not a ton. Both of these gentlemen have fought in the UFC before. Long Xiao is a grappler. He isn't particularly dangerous, but he is very durable. He has a wealth of experience, 35 fights under his belt, and he carries that composure with him. He doesn't panic if things aren't going well, and he does find himself in bad positions more often than you would think. He can be taken down. He can be touched up. He can also struggle with guys who pressure forward, but he typically finds a way to win, and he has a wrestle at all costs type approach. He's taking on Quang Lee. Let's move over to Quang. He's taking on Quang Lee. You'll see here the loss to Chris Gutierrez. That was short notice. He stepped up on just a few days' notice to fight a UFC veteran in Chris Gutierrez. He was previously scheduled to fight in the Contender Series a month later, meaning they took him out of camp a month early and moved him from the baby cage to the big boy cage and put it on a much larger event. And he had a decent showing. He wasn't afraid to move forward. He threw big. He even had a few takedowns. Style-wise, he's a Muay Thai striker. He is light on his toes. He has that rolled shoulders type approach, and he likes to plot forward. He finds his range with kicks, and he likes to hang on the outside of the pocket. He did have a good showing in his last fight. That was impressive, the fact that he wasn't afraid of Chris Gutierrez. But the reality is he didn't win that fight, and he got dotted up. His opponent is a very good wrestler. He could bomb as well. I think Long Xiao is going to get this done because I think the wrestling is going to be the issue, because Quang Lee wants to come forward, wants to try to shoot a few takedowns. Obviously, he's got that Thai style, but that wasn't doing well for him against Chris Gutierrez, so he went to the wrestling. And I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to try to Thai fight because I think Long Xiao is going to take him down. So then he's probably going to try to shoot on his own, and I don't think he's going to have the same success. So I am on the other side. I think Long Xiao is going to get it done. And frankly, at $8,200, he may be a great piece in your entry because he may score well with all of the takedowns and the wrestling control. Then we have Loner Kavanagh taking on Jose Ochoa. Loner Kavanagh, UFC debut. He is a Brit. One of the few on this card that is not from that part of the world. He's a fast-paced striker, incredible movement, good speed. The speed is very, very, very impressive to the point where you watch his highlights and you'll think that they were edited. They were sped up. He's lightning fast. He has raw power in his hands, so the combination of that speed and that raw power can do well for him. He doesn't really chase knockouts, and he's got plenty of cardio to go for a full 15 minutes. He is taking on Jose Ochoa. Jose Ochoa is a well-rounded guy. He's happy to slug it out or work in some grappling. Takedown defense is solid. He does a really good job defending the actual takedowns, right? He'll stuff the head. He'll move his hips instead of just doing little side head pitter-patter shots that do absolutely nothing for anybody. He's got good pressure. He's got good volume, and he does have some raw power. He can be hittable, though, but he's usually durable enough to hang. While Jose Ochoa is also undefeated, both of these gentlemen are 7-0. Jose has not fought nearly the same level of competition. Jose also is very, very hittable. I think the combination of Loner's speed and power are going to be a problem for Jose. Loner's going to be the pick here. Problem is, he is very, very expensive at $9,400. And you have two undefeated guys. Until either one of them are in some trouble, you just don't know how it's going to go. Loner is the pick, somewhat confident in that, but I think we have better spots for our DraftKings lineup. Then we have Carlos Hernandez taking on Tumendemberel. That wasn't the worst I've pronounced it all week. Carlos Hernandez, he's a UFC vet. You can see here he's got plenty of fights. Obviously, they didn't all go his way. He is 2-3, but he has fought a somewhat high level of competition. Rai Tatsura, very touted prospect. Tatsura Taira, very good prospect. Alan Nascimento, very good grappler. So he beat Victor Altamirano, who's solid. He beat Dennis Bondar, who's not great. So Carlos Hernandez has had a bit of a rough run, but once you dig in and once you look at the competition, you're like, oh, I get it. I get why he lost those fights. He's got okay striking, decent grappling. His striking has solid accuracy, deceiving power. Not the most technically sound guy, but he's got a good jab. He's got a straight that follows right behind it. He's another one of these guys that's got real slick BJJ, but doesn't really have the wrestling to force the BJJ. He's been known to throw up a Hail Mary submission or two, flying triangles. And he is coming off that decision loss to Rai Tusura. I watched that live. That fight kind of sucked. He's taking on Tumendemberel. And Nyam is a powerful striker who's got a wide base. He bombs punches. He uses a very long step-in jab. He'll close the distance, and then he just swings wild. He's got no problem with a dirty pocket fight, but he can be hit, and he doesn't have the best striking defense. He's always moving forward. He's always doing something. He's also undefeated. 7 stoppages, but he is relatively untested. The untested part is what makes this interesting. I think Carlos Hernandez probably wins this fight because of the high-level experience. His losses are better than any one of Carlos Hernandez's losses are better than anybody that Tumendemberel has beaten. Carlos Hernandez has fought a much higher level of competition. With that being said, this fight should be much closer to a pick'em than these current odds and the current pricing. Nyam might be a phenomenal DraftKings fantasy play at $7,600. The guy's a gamer. Go watch the highlights. They're spectacular. He comes forward. He tries to win fights. Great pressure. He's always doing something. So if the light isn't too big for him and the spotlight doesn't bother him and he can handle the pressure, he definitely can win this fight. So I think he makes a lot of sense for a DraftKings fantasy lineup, especially when we're looking at some of the pricing on these other maniacs and how expensive some of them can be. Then we have a tournament final. We got Feng Xiaocan or Xiaocan Feng taking on Ming Shi. Xiaocan Feng can be a tale of two people. We've seen her just stay on the outside, point strike, not commit to anything, not do anything risky, just point fight and chill. We've also seen her be a non-stop wrestler. She will shoot real takedowns. She doesn't rely on the cage, no trip nonsense, actual takedowns in the middle of the octagon. She does a good job after the takedowns maintaining position. She'll stay busy enough to not get stood up, but not so busy that she has to do any actual real work. She is a dominant fighter when she can get her game plan going. She's taking on Ming Shi. Ming Shi's a forward pressure striker. She is very small. She is only 5'2". And because she's so small, she can struggle with range. She is tough. She is aggressive. And she has had some success in the past. Her striking is not clean, but it's heavy. It's always there. Her takedown defense against the cage is solid, but open mat, not so much. This should be a pretty straightforward fight. I think Xiaocan Feng comes forward. I do think she wrestles here, and I think she gets the takedowns. If it's a staring contest, then putting in your lineup is going to be a problem, but I don't think it will be. Feng should be in your lineup. I am pretty confident in that, and I will spend the $9,200. Then we have Hoon Choi taking on Kiru Sahota. Listen, you have seen me break down these fights in other videos. Go check the UFC website, see how they spell this name. It's not Donghyun Choi like this. Go to Tapology, see how they spell it. Go to Bet Online, see how they spell it. Every single freaking website this week is spelling all the names differently. And I'm not just talking about, in the Asian culture, the last name is the first name. No, I'm not talking about the Yao Ming effect. I am talking about the literal spelling. Tapology has this as Dong space Hoon space Choi. DraftKings has Donghyun Choi. Not even Hoon, it's Hun. So good luck this week, guys. Let's just get through it. UFC 310 is the next event. But Donghyun Choi, cautious striker. He's got a good wide stance. He's got low hands. He can be a bit hittable, but he's usually tough enough to survive. He works in some takedowns, but he can sort of struggle with control. The takedowns work for him because he's so shy and so gun shy in his feet and takes so much time that he just lulls you into I guess we're doing this. And then boom, he'll shoot a takedown out of absolute nowhere. He's not very strong. He's not very fast. He's not very powerful, but he is tough. He's got a ton of cardio and he can take over fights late because of that cardio. He is taking on Kiru Sahota. Kiru Sahota is one of my solid underdog picks on this card. I gave you a few underdogs already, but I didn't necessarily pick them, right? I said they were good for DraftKings Fantasy. In this case, I'm going to pick Sahota to win this fight outright. He's super long. He uses that length really well. He gets longer, it seems, when he throws punches and kicks. He bounces on his toes. He cuts off the cage well. He'll plant, and then he'll throw body kicks. He'll throw head kicks. He'll throw really long jabs, nice right hooks. His takedown defense is very good as well because he makes himself as long as this is me showing you how he spreads his legs. He makes his legs as wide as possible, widens that base, and just worries about the takedown instead of whatever other nonsense is going his way. He does not have a ton of power, but he's got good volume. He loses his length really well to touch people up. He's going to be the pick. $7,800 seems like a pretty solid price point. Then we have Su Young Yu. This one, the only difference on the books is there a space between Su and Young. So I'm okay with this one. This one isn't crazy. We have Su Young Yu taking on Balgyn Jenisuly. Su Young Yu, non-stop wrestler. Absolute non-stop. He's going to shoot takedowns before you even touch gloves. Just takedown, takedown, takedown. If he does entertain the striking, it's really just a pump or jab or two before takedown, takedown, takedown. He literally will attempt 20 to 30 takedowns per fight. He'll even throw jabs and then just tap your knee to remind you that he's there. And if he wants to, he could shoot a takedown. He is sloppy though, but unrelenting. When he gets to the ground, he's an aggressive grappler who's constantly climbing the body and working for a submission. He is taking on Balgyn Jenisuly. This is absolutely a name. Not only the first, how was I wording that? What I'm trying to say is they spell this name crazy too. Not just the last name, the first name as well. Balgyn, I've seen it with an X and a W. It's tough week. Tough week to be sitting in front of this camera, pronouncing names, doing research, tough week. But I'm saying Jenisuly, there's not an N. They don't even have an N here. Go to Tapology. You'll see Jenisuly. Anyway, Balgyn, how they have it. Jaileyisi. We got Balgyn. Long, lean guy for the division. Does a decent job using that size. He does a nice job plodding forward, cutting off the cage. He stands really tall, and then people shoot on him pretty often because he stands so tall. But the takedown defense is solid, and he does a really good job always hurting people. He's always looking to hurt you with strikes off top, strikes in transition. If you shoot a takedown, he will cross-face as hard as hell. You shoot a takedown, he'll push the head off the hips and bang, throw in an elbow. He's always looking to do damage. He's always staying busy, and he's always doing something. I think he can pull this out. I mentioned I've loved the dogs in the road to the UFC tournament. I think this is going to be an easy defend the takedown, keep the fight standing kind of fight. It might not be easy because Yu is just going to shoot, but I think Yu is going to shoot a takedown, maybe get one or two, but then they will progressively get sloppier and sloppier, be from farther away and farther away, easier and easier to defend. And I think Balgyn, however the hell you want to spell his last name, will get this done. Not going to have him in my lineup. There are better dogs at $7,900 or less than Balgyn Jenisuly. Then we got Ozzy Diaz taking on Mingyang Zhang. Ozzy Diaz, UFC debut, but has nothing to do with the road to the UFC tournament. He's the former LFA champion of the world at middleweight. And that's what he is, a middleweight that is blowing up to fight at light heavyweight. He's a striker. He's light on his feet. Uses his movement pretty well. He's got some grappling, but by no means is he a good grappler. He can find finishes in the clinch or at distance. He is creative with his striking. He is pretty tough, but he can also be hit, and he is pretty chinny. He is 6'4", so he's not short by any means, but he's also not thick. He's kind of a lean guy. He doesn't really fit in the 205-pound weight class, and I think this is going to be a problem for him because Mingyang Zhang is big. He is a big dude. He is thick. He is built for this weight class. He's also very dangerous. Plenty of ground and pound finishes, and we just saw in his last fight when he knocked out Figueiredo on his feet. One punch, bink, got it done. He also has no problem coming forward, shooting takedowns, and then working like crazy on top. He has a 100% finish rate, and those are split between knockouts and submissions, but even the knockouts are mostly on the ground. I think Mingyang Zhang gets it done here. I think he can get the takedowns if he needs them. And if he doesn't need them, that means he's having success on the feet. $9,100 in DraftKings Fantasy. I will spend that money, especially because we picked so many dogs already. Then we have Carlos Ulberg taking on Volkan Oezdemir. We're squarely in the main card, so all these fights are going to start to look a little more familiar for you. Carlos Ulberg is a former professional kickboxer that made the change, moved over to MMA, switched up his sport. And he's done quite well. He's only got one loss on his record, and that was an unfortunate come-from-ahead knockout to Kennedy Nzechukwu. Kennedy Nzechukwu was losing, getting dotted up. Carlos was running away with that fight, and then he ate a big one, and that was the end of that. But Carlos Ulberg's a big dude, former professional kickboxer, uses those skills really well. He does have a takedown, one takedown, and he has a 3 takedowns. He has a 75% takedown accuracy and a 75% takedown defense as well. He also has submission wins. Obviously, that came with a knockdown first, so don't let it trick you into thinking he's a jiu-jitsu guy. And that could be a problem here because he is fighting the best fighter he has ever fought. Volkan Oezdemir doesn't have the best record in the UFC and will be categorized as chinny by a lot of people, but he is the best fighter that Carlos Ulberg has fought so far. Let's look at Volkan's career. Ovince St. Preux, but in 2017, before he was a 40-year-old man. Misha Serkinov, Jimmy Manoa. These are decent wins. Okay, he earned himself a title shot. He lost to Daniel Cormier. That's not a terrible win. Daniel Cormier was the champion of the world. Lost to Anthony Smith. 2018 Anthony Smith, that's not terrible. Dominic Reyes. 2019 Dominic Reyes, that was before the all-time losing skid. Then he gets himself back. He beats Ilir Latifi. Beats Alexander Racek. Then he lost to Jiri Prohaska. That guy became champion. Lost to Ankalaev, potential future champion. Nikita Krylov, that's the only loss where it's like, that one's not great. But he did just knock out Johnny Walker, and that makes you an amazing fighter. In all seriousness, no, Volkan Oezdemir is good. He's got a well-rounded tool set. He can work takedowns. He can strike. He's got really good power offensively. People will question the chin, but the reality is who knocked him out? Yuri. Yuri's knocked out most people not named Alex Pereira. So Volkan Oezdemir can play spoiler. I don't think he does. I am going to pick Carlos Ulberg here because professional kickboxer, this fight is on the feet, and hopefully he can defend the takedowns. So it's that simple. I'm going to go that route. Carlos Ulberg should be able to get it done, but I don't think I'm going to spend the money on him here because let's just see, right? Volkan Oezdemir has fought some of the best people on the planet. He's not old yet. He might be able to at least survive, and then in that case, Ulberg will not score well. So I'm probably going to leave this one alone, although Ulberg is going to be the pick. Then we have Quang taking on Gabriela Hernandez. Quang, crazy striker. Insanely powerful striker. You're going to see this knockout on paper over Victoria Leonardo. That was a one-punch knockout. That was like a men's heavyweight division knockout, not a women's flyweight division knockout. She just went boom, done. Quang is a professional kickboxer that also transitioned to MMA. She beat Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing, like somewhat handily. And now she's made the transition. The big question is always, how's the takedown defense? So far, it seems good. On the regional scene, it seems good. UFC didn't even matter in that fight. So we just have to assume that it's okay and it's improving. And I'm not sure if she's going to need it or not because she's taking on Gabriela Hernandez. And yes, Gabriela had 2 takedowns in her last fight. That's how she got her first UFC win over Carly Judice. But the reality is Gabriela Hernandez is also a kickboxer. Started her career as a kickboxer, transitioned to MMA. She has some jiu-jitsu. She'll hang out on her back a little too long, try to throw things up, give up minutes. But Gabriela Hernandez is more well-rounded in this matchup, but I think the striking gap between the two of them is too wide. Quang should be able to come forward, dot up Gabriela Hernandez, potentially even finish her and get this win. So Quang is going to be the pick, but she is so expensive. The only way, because there's no grappling here, the only way she's worth that money is if she gets a knockout. And while I do think she probably does, I think we have some other fighters on this card that should be worth their money. Then we have the featured fight of the evening. Song Kanan taking on Muslim Salikov. Listen, I'm about to railroad Song Kanan because he has the worst fight IQ in history, but he is a very durable guy who hits very hard. Song Kanan almost knocked out Ian Gary. You'll see the knockdown here. He had Ian Gary dead to rights, almost knocked out. And then sure as shit decided to grapple instead of chase the finish. Could have changed his life. Then he comes back, smokes Rolando Bedoya. Not smokes, but knocked him down. And we saw that power on display again. Kevin Josette was able to survive some of the craziness. And Ricky Glenn, not recorded with an official knockdown, but he had Ricky on ice skates more than one time. Song Kanan has a ton of power. He doesn't follow that power up. He'll make dumbass decisions that let you recover, shake off the cobwebs, get back at it. But Song Kanan has absolute one-punch knockout power in his hands. And he might need it because he will be fighting a 40-year-old man in Muslim Salikov. Muslim Salikov, the king of Kung Fu, doesn't really fight like a Kung Fu guy. He's a decent technical striker. He's got decent wrestling in his back pocket as well. He moves forward. He hits pretty hard in his own right. He holds nothing back. Almost every single strike that he throws is a significant strike. He's got good takedown defense, solid takedown offense, and the striking is very good. But it's closer to traditional than what you would see with an actual kung fu fighter. He is coming off this win over Ponzinibbio after a 2-fight skid, one of which was a knockout to Randy Brown. Muslim Salkov should win, but as you can see here, he scores like shit. Oh, he knocked out Paulo Fiallo. Still didn't cover his salary with a knockout win. Guy does nothing, doesn't score well. You can't have him in your lineup. If you think he loses and you believe in Song's power and Song somehow developed the brain capacity to follow up after having somebody rocked, then throw Song in your lineup. Then we have the co-main event of the evening. Tabitha Ricci taking on Yan Xiaonan. Tabitha Ricci, as we all know by now, she's a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. She's got very good jiu-jitsu. Striking is not great. The cardio, on the other hand, is absolutely spectacular. So what she does is she makes up for the holes in the wrestling with the cardio. Tons of forward pressure. Throws her hands, not great. Moves, gets you against the cage, tries to drag you to the ground. She did take down Angela Hill 3 times, but that was like 3 out of 175. She's got tons of pressure. Plenty of cardio, pretty durable, good offensive jiu-jitsu, but nothing, she's not Mackenzie Dern, nothing terrifying. She's taking on Yan Xiaonan. Powerful striker. She also has got okay grappling. It is improving. She's a good boxer, well-timed strikes. She's got clean technique, does not shy away from a dirty fight. She is willing to bang it out. She does have 3 UFC losses, but they're all quality. Oh, you lost to Carla Esparza, former world champion. Marina Rodriguez, very good. And Wei Li, the current champion. That's her most recent fight, was a loss for the title. She had 3 takedowns. She got taken down 6 times, but she had 3 of her own. Yan Xiaonan's a good fighter, should win this fight. The problem is, outside of a finish, she doesn't score that well because she's going to need to go wrestle heavy or land a million strikes. You see, she scored 90 points. She's not going to knock out Tabitha Ricci. So let's take this one off the table. Then if we look at her other wins, 72 points in a 3-round decision. 90, but that was a 5-round decision. Yan Xiaonan doesn't score well. And I also think she's going to be held against the cage for a good majority of this fight and really isn't going to get her hands going. So we have a decision. We're not going to have any wrestling from the Yan side. Tabitha Ricci might actually be a very good dog here. If she can get the wrestling going, she could beat Yan Xiaonan the same way Carla Esparza did. The problem is Tabitha Ricci's takedowns suck. So we're going to end up with a bunch of cage control and a decision that's far closer than any of us want it to be. Let me just go back to Tabitha Ricci real quick, see how she scored in the Pennington fight. This was nothing but cage control. 74 points on an $8,300 salary. Well, now she's only $7,400. If you think she wins, she might be a sneaky good underdog play because of the cage control, takedown attempts, and striking. Then we have the main event of the evening. Petr Yan taking on Deiveson Figueiredo. This is the 135-pound weight class where Petr Yan was the former champion of the world. Petr Yan's a very good kickboxer. He's got great takedown defense, solid, underrated takedown offense as well. He is 2-3 in his last 5, but he lost to Aljamain Sterling in a rematch that a lot of people think he won. Then he lost to Sean O'Malley in a dogfight that a lot of people think he won. And then he finally lost a convincing fight to Merab Dvalishvili. Since then, he's bounced back with a pretty solid performance over Song Yadong, where he had a couple of takedowns and the cleaner striking overall. It was essentially a clinic on there are levels to this. I get you're the young kid, you're the up-and-comer, but I'm not old yet. He's taking on Deiveson Figueiredo, the former world champion of the weight class below this, 125 pounds. Deiveson Figueiredo struggled with weight cuts, didn't have good enough cardio, and he's getting a little older. So he moved up in weight, and he's looked great since doing it. He turned into a Nurmagomedov against Rob Font. Didn't even need a bunch of takedowns to submit Cody Garbrandt. And then in the Chito Vera fight, not only did he have 2 takedowns against a guy with good takedown defense, he also knocked him down. The first ever recorded knockdown of Chito Vera. Deiveson Figueiredo has looked like a different fighter at 135 pounds. And that's why I am shocked that these odds are what they are. If you want to make Figgy the underdog, I get it. We've seen him quit in the past. This Moreno fight, he quit, turned his head, said, all right, end it. He's also the smaller guy by a decent margin. And Petr Yan's got very good takedown defense. So I understand Figgy being the dog. 7,200 dog, that seems absurd to me. This could be a weird situation where you want to stack the main event and have both fighters in your lineup. It could be a back and forth war, and maybe nobody else really scores anything meaningful. Petr Yan, I think, wins this fight because he's going to be a little bigger. I think his striking is cleaner, and his takedown defense will be there. But if Figgy shows up with beautiful takedowns, nonstop pressure, Figgy could look pretty good in this fight. Petr Yan's going to be the pick. I'll let you make your own mind up for this main event. Guys, that is the breakdown. Check out the greatest ownership projections on this planet. They will be preloaded into the DraftKings Optimizer, and you can join these people who have been cleaning up, taking down huge UFC tournaments, $50,000, $75,000. I think the highest we had was $78,000 in one single tournament. But we also are flooded with $2,000, $3,000, $500. Give it a try. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member. It's freaking $10 for an entire month. Not only will you get all the DraftKings fantasy tools and insight that you need, you're also going to get picks, bets, artificial intelligence, and everything else you could ever need heading into a fight weekend.